Hello, this is Craig with RedChip Companies. Thank you for joining today's event with Atossa Therapeutics, which trades on the Nasdaq under the ticker ATOS. With us today, we have Dr. Stephen Quay, Chairman of the Board and Chief Executive Officer of Atossa. We will begin with a brief presentation in a moment, and then we will answer your questions. Users may submit a question at any time by using the Q&A tool at the bottom of the Zoom window. Before we begin, please allow me to read the safe harbor statement. This call may contain forward-looking statements within the meaning of the Private Securities Litigation Reform Act of 1995. All statements pertaining to future financial and/or operating results, along with other statements about the future expectations, beliefs, goals, plans, or prospects expressed by management, constitute forward-looking statements. Any statements that are not historical fact should also be considered forward-looking statements. Of course, forward-looking statements involve risks and uncertainties. I now turn this webinar over to Dr. Quay. Please go ahead.
Okay, well, thank you. Technical difficulties are always fun. I am Chairman, CEO, and President of Atossa Therapeutics. We trade on the Nasdaq with the symbol ATOS. As indicated, I'll be making forward-looking statements today, and so before you make any investment decisions, please review all of our filings with the SEC. So I would like to give you a corporate highlight here to really focus on a few key factors. Number one, we are addressing a multi-billion-dollar market opportunity across rapidly growing estrogen receptor positive breast cancer areas. Endoxifen, which is the drug you'll hear about a lot today, has demonstrated broad utility across the breast cancer paradigm with first and best-in-class potential both in metastatic and in prevention and in neoadjuvant and adjuvant settings. We have a robust and growing IP portfolio with broad protection in both the United States and globally. An experienced leadership team and world-renowned advisors fill out the management of the company, and we have a strong financial position with over a year of runway and no debt. The leadership includes myself and Heather Reese, our CPA, who is Chief Financial Officer and Secretary. Dr. Claudia Lopez, our VP of Clinical Product Development. Ms. Deli Behan, our Senior Vice President for Business Operations, and Michael Parks, VP for Investor and Public Relations. All of us have deep experience in the biotechnology field. We're complemented by world-renowned thought leaders, including Per Hall, the Charisma Principal Investigator looking at the prevention trial, Laura Esserman, MD from University of California, San Francisco, Time Magazine 100 Most Influential People in 2016. She is the I-SPY Principal Investigator. And finally, Dr. Matthew Getz of the Mayo Clinic in Minnesota, who is the Evangeline Principal Investigator and understands endoxifen probably better than any clinician who has worked with it. In the area of breast cancer research and development, the key drug field that you look at is cases that are estrogen receptor positive. This is 75 to 80% of all breast cancers. So right from the beginning, I want to focus on the fact that we are dealing with the most common and large majority of breast cancer cases. In this space, estrogen blockers, endocrine therapies are the backbone of this process, but they have significant setbacks. For example, 40 to 50% of patients discontinue endocrine therapy primarily for side effects that interfere with quality of life. Almost half the patients in first-line treatment, when you combine aromatase inhibitors and CDK4/6 inhibitors, don't respond and need additional therapies. And finally, many patients in second-line therapy with fulvestrant also do not respond. What is needed in this space is an agent that has improved efficacy, reduced resistance when mutations arise in the estrogen receptor, molecules that can induce apoptosis or cellular death, not just stopping the cells from growing, but actually killing them, excuse me, and improved adherence, which is the drugs have a higher quality of life. We all know that tamoxifen was the very first drug approved for breast cancer many, many decades ago. So it establishes a proven paradigm despite the fact it has significant shortcomings. What I want to show on this slide, and I hope you can see my cursor, is there are four molecules to think about when you think about endoxifen and its parent molecule, the prodrug tamoxifen. There's two steps to get from tamoxifen to endoxifen that occur in the liver. These are the major pathway. 91% of the molecules go through this pathway through a drug called N-desmethyltamoxifen. About 8% goes through 4-hydroxytamoxifen. And the key additional point is both tamoxifen and N-desmethyltamoxifen have no activity in stopping breast cancer growth. 4-hydroxytamoxifen and endoxifen do. Endoxifen is superior to 4-hydroxy in its ability to stop estrogen from activating the receptor. It's also in about 10-fold higher concentration. So endoxifen is really all of the activity of tamoxifen. And many studies looking at the clinical efficacy of tamoxifen, focusing on blood levels of these four metabolites, show that endoxifen predicts the long-term efficacy. So that is a molecule we are focused on, and it in fact has activities when it's isolated and given at higher doses that make us able to say that endoxifen is not only not your grandmother's tamoxifen, but it's also not your mother's aromatase inhibitor. So let's talk about its points of differentiation. First, it has superior estrogen receptor antagonistic activity. It is over 100 times more potent on the estrogen receptor than all of the other molecules that have been studied. Secondly, with respect to its higher dose activity, it is an inhibitor of a pathway called PKCβ1. This is completely separate and distinct from the estrogen receptor pathway and is a route that leads to programmed cell death, a process called apoptosis. So this makes it unique among all of the other estrogen receptor modifiers that you may hear of because of this separate pathway activity. Many of the current drugs that are given for estrogen receptor positive breast cancer cause evolution to occur literally, and estrogen receptor mutants occur oftentimes within 6 to 9 months after treatment, especially with aromatase inhibitors. Importantly, endoxifen has activity in the major mutations that occur in this selection process. It has improved safety and tolerability with respect to tamoxifen and other drugs, which make it a quality of life issue for many women in superior tolerance. It is a superior combination partner. So we now know that many patients with estrogen receptor positive breast cancer are given combination therapy. So you're looking at primarily a backbone of CDK4/6 inhibitors and then varying the estrogen inhibitory component. In that paradigm, endoxifen is the superior agent. So for all of these reasons, it's highly differentiated from both the current and the near-term future molecules. It also works across the entire paradigm. So if we think of prevention of breast cancer, that is early detection of women with high dense breast or Gale model indications of being at high risk for future breast cancer, we have shown that we can reduce the density, and that has the potential to have downstream impacts on preventing cancer in this high risk group. The neoadjuvant setting, which is considered the time between definitive diagnosis and the actual therapeutic interventions of surgery and radiation if it's needed, this 4 to 6 month period of time, we see great activity in this area for potential downstaging of the disease, stopping the proliferation during this period of time. And this is an important phase 2 that is ongoing with the I-SPY group and with the Evangeline trials at the Mayo Clinic and UC San Francisco, respectively. Finally, once the definitive surgery and radiation has occurred, the clinicians want two endpoints now: prevent recurrence in that breast and prevent a new cancer in the contralateral breast. We know that once a woman has breast cancer in one breast, she is more likely to have it in the other breast. So these are drugs that are given for a 5-year period of time in the adjuvant setting to produce these two kinds of recurrences. And obviously, if you're going to take a medicine for 5 years after your definitive therapy, Side effects and tolerance to the therapies, if it's an injection or if there are a lot of side effects, become really critical. Finally, in the 5 to 10 to 15% of women who fail in the adjuvant setting and end up with metastatic disease, that is disease outside of the breast and locally in the lymph nodes, metastatic disease, looking at the impact of endoxifen, both as monotherapy and as combination, is critically important. So, as we've indicated previously, after a deep analysis in the first half of this year, we have settled on our lead program in metastatic breast cancer as the priority indication and major focus. This is obvious for a number of important reasons. Number one, it's a very efficient clinical and regulatory pathway. You'll see many companies with new products in oncology going down the path of treating metastatic disease. It becomes a platform for adding additional indications with the mindset that when the FDA has gone through the initial high hurdle process of getting a drug into the market in oncology, adding indications in additional settings for that drug becomes an easier proposition. Uh, and finally, it's right-sized for Atossa. This market is growing rapidly, and by 2030 has been projected by other people to be a $42 billion market. So for all of these reasons, this is a key reason that we settled on the metastatic position. Um, Looking here in this slide, we want to emphasize that Z-endoxifen exhibits superior anti-tumor activity compared to standard of care medications. So looking at the preclinical setting, we look here at both ER-positive breast cancer and then ER-positive breast cancer that is resistant to aromatase inhibitors. So in the first case, you can see that compared to no treatment at all, and looking at tamoxifen, endoxifen is superior to tamoxifen in this setting. Now, switching over to cancers that are actually aromatase resistant, where you see very little activity when you add an aromatase inhibitor, both fulvestrant and estrogen stop, and endoxifen stop the growth of these tumors in these preclinical models. This carries over into the clinic. When you look at Z-endoxifen's activity, for example, in this patient with a metastasis in the liver that you can see at baseline, about 4 months later, this thing has completely disappeared in this particular patient. Here, looking at progression-free survival in postmenopausal women in the metastatic setting. So this is exactly the setting that we've just gotten feedback from the FDA on. You can see that endoxifen is superior to tamoxifen for progression-free survival, which is a clinically acceptable endpoint for FDA approval. And this was highly significant, this difference that is seen here in this trial. In some of our own trials where we're looking at the neoadjuvant setting, early signals, looking at the first cycle or 28 days of endoxifen treatment, the Ki-67 measurement from baseline to 28 days shows a significant decrease. In this study, we looked at the threshold of getting to less than 10%, which is a clinically meaningful threshold for long-term survival. About 85% of the patients achieved that. Looking out at cycle 3 MRI tumor size, you can see that in all cases there was a reduction in tumor size, with one case showing it completely disappearing and very high activity in other cases. We did a deep dive with a company called In Silico Medicine that does AI for transcriptome, or where drugs have synergistic activities. In this setting, endoxifen was superior to all of the other agents we tested in combining with CDK4/6 inhibitors. And in fact, this led to a clinical study we're doing in I-SPY with Lilly's drug, CDK4/6 inhibitor, abemaciclib, showing synergistic activity in the in silico work, and we're hoping to see that in the clinical trials that are ongoing. So as we announced last week, we have had very positive feedback from the FDA on our endoxifen program. This process is one in which a company produces a series of questions with the company's position on those questions, and then requests what's called a Type C meeting. The FDA will typically give back its position on the questions, And if there's additional disagreement between the company and the FDA, a meeting occurs. In our case, there was concurrence between the FDA and our positions, which is really gratifying for both our ability to understand where the FDA is in the approval of oncology drugs, in 2025, as well as our own program. So they affirmed four key features: that the dose optimization program that we have in place under what the FDA has called Project Optimus, a program they put in place last August, which is important in clinical development, and I can certainly see the rationale for it. But it certainly is an additional impediment for all oncology drugs because it requires a very deep and profound phase 2 optimization study. But we have concurrence from the FDA in our program in that case. In looking at combination therapies in the setting where, again, we're treating metastatic patients who are having failure on current therapies, we got agreement around what programs, what combination drugs, which would be most meaningful. We will hone down that as we go into a clinical protocol development and inform you of our final decisions in that space. Importantly, no additional non-clinical studies are needed to go into the clinic at this point in time. So therefore, there's no further animal studies or other non-clinical studies needed. And finally, cardiac monitoring, which is pretty classic finding for looking for QT prolongation, which can give you cardiac symptoms. They agreed to our proposal for a protocol to look at that as well. So we now have clear alignment with the FDA, and this has de-risked our program significantly. So the path forward now, from now until the end of the year, is to finalize our IND submission to align ourselves with this FDA program that they've agreed upon, to announce the trial specifics, as I've indicated, patient number, size, dosing, and some of the inclusion/exclusion parameters, and those sorts of things, including the selection of the contract research organization we will work with, where the sites will be with respect to the international features of this in the US versus outside the US, filing the IND, and then initiating the clinical study. The study objectives are pretty straightforward. A dose ranging study to identify the safe and effective dose to go forward into combination studies for efficacy. We have regulatory alignment on that, and this has significant shareholder value in both de-risking our program and giving visibility on the future pathway going forward. We believe that (Z)-endoxifen may offer many improved safety parameters. This is based on, initially, preclinical studies where we show that among other SERMs, which can produce bone loss, endoxifen uniquely does not produce bone loss in preclinical models. And in the clinical setting, we are seeing and have seen, and other people have seen, in really up to 700 people dosed overall over the last few years, a great tolerance for this drug. So for example, in studies conducted by others, (Z)-endoxifen was given at doses up to 360 milligrams per day, up to 5 years, with relatively few adverse side effects, giving us a very wide therapeutic window. In the metastatic setting, a study that was done by the Mayo Clinic and NCI showed that the dosing between 20 milligrams and 160 milligrams occurred without identifying a clear maximum tolerated dose. And most adverse events were mild to moderate. For those who follow oncology companies or oncology stocks or that sort of thing, drugs rarely don't have a maximum tolerated dose in this space because, by definition, you're trying to differentially kill a cancer and not harm normal cells. This is pretty unique finding here. In the Evangeline trial that is currently ongoing, the drug has been dosed at 40 and 80 milligrams, and it's been generally well tolerated, with the majority of adverse events being mild to moderate, with only one serious adverse event, a hemorrhagic ovarian cyst, which is common for drugs that, in premenopausal women, is common for drugs that block estrogen activity. We also have the current programs, as we've talked about, in earlier disease, both for prevention and for neoadjuvant. As a reminder, at the end of this last year, we reported the results of the Charisma trial, where we used 1 and 2 milligrams in placebo and looked at its effect on density reduction in the mammogram at 3 and 6 months. We saw a significant reduction at 1 milligram, a slightly higher reduction at 2 milligrams. And in terms of the plasma levels of Z-endoxifen, these were squarely in line with where tamoxifen is in terms of the endoxifen levels it produces. And importantly, there was no significant difference in adverse events observed between the 1 milligram dose and the placebo dose. So remember, this was a double-blind study, so neither the patients, subjects, nor the doctors knew which dosing was being received. And so having in the prevention setting where you have a woman who doesn't have a disease, you're trying to prevent a disease, you have a pretty high threshold for adverse events. So it's gratifying that we have placebo level events at this 1 milligram dose. In the neoadjuvant setting, both in Evangeline and I-SPY, the 4 weeks Ki-67 level of being less than 10%. Again, I've alluded to the POETIC study, which showed that levels below 10% in patients predicted long-term survival benefits, recurrence benefits at 5 years. So that's a nice clinical threshold that you can identify in 28 days that in other studies has predicted future clinical events that are important. Looking at the same endpoints in the I-SPY trial, we can see that 95% completed the dosing response, and that 65% fell below 10.5%, which again achieves that threshold for long-term benefit. And importantly, in the measurements of the tumor size by MRI, there was a 78% reduction from baseline to the time of surgery. So as summarized here, endoxifen is clearly differentiated from the classic estrogen receptor drugs, tamoxifen, aromatase inhibitors, and fulvestrant. Its level of anti-estrogen activity is superior. The safety profile is very similar. Remember, fulvestrant is a monthly injection of a 5 ml oily solution, so the tolerance is very low for that, but women, of course, go through that because it's important for their treatment. We have both estrogen-dependent and independent mechanisms of action, which are not present for these other drugs. Addressable patients is a larger population than these other drugs because of some of these findings, and the combination potential is superior based on in silico work that we've done. So coming up, we've achieved at this midpoint a global steering committee to address and focus us on the metastatic setting, a successful FDA meeting, which has occurred and we've reported on. We will be selecting principal investigators for the ongoing trial, and the contract research organization selection is coming up very soon. In the second half, you will see early disease meetings with the FDA to get guidance around some of the other programs that we have. First patient on path for the metastatic setting after IND submission, and a combination therapy update. Beginning next year, continued regulatory readouts in the early disease state, well, especially with I-SPY combination, and then the second half, Evangeline, metastatic cancer, and continued regulatory readouts. So a busy year with respect to milestones for our shareholders. Remember that we have over 1 year of cash and 0 debt at this point in time. So yes, as of the end of the first quarter, 65 million in cash. We have 129 million shares outstanding, almost 9% beneficial ownership by management and the board of directors, standing warrants of about 10 million remaining that will be exercisable or expire in mid-September. So finally, as a reminder, we are addressing a multi-billion-dollar market opportunity. We have a demonstrated molecule with broad utility in metastatic prevention and neoadjuvant and adjuvant settings, a robust and growing IP portfolio with broad protection both in the US and abroad, an experienced leadership team and world-renowned advisors, and a strong financial position with over 1 year of runway and 0 debt. Thank you for your attention. Let's take some questions here. I'll stop sharing at this point.
Thank you very much, Dr. Quay. Press the Q&A button and type in any question you have for Dr. Quay. As we can only take your written questions today, we ask that you please not use the raise hand button. Dr. Quay, we've already received some questions for you here. Number one, could you summarize the next major clinical milestones for Z-endoxifen and how confident you are in achieving those timelines?
Yeah, well, this should almost be a test question after this presentation because hopefully even the shareholders can answer this. But it's all of the steps that will go forward between now and that first patient in the metastatic setting in our Project Optimus trial. So it's getting agreement on who the CRO will be that will do that, getting agreement on the final details of the protocol itself, reporting that to shareholders, filing an IND, which is what is necessary to begin clinical trials in this time frame, and then opening the IND with the clinical studies. Additionally, getting feedback from the FDA on some of our other programs. Because of the clarity we received around this first program, we believe that the FDA could help us in identifying pathways with some of the other indications, and we'll be looking at that over the course of this fall.
Dr. Quay, given recent patent challenges and ongoing litigation, how secure is Atossa's intellectual property around Z-endoxifen, and what steps are being taken to strengthen patent protection?
Yeah, great question. So, and I want to frame it from the fact that I've invented 7 drugs, patented 7 drugs that are FDA approved, have 94 US patents. So, we are currently in a litigation process, and as you might expect, we make no comments about that currently. We're doing filings, and there'll be decisions being made, over the next months in this process. Having said that, I am extremely confident that we will have the protection we need to prevent competitors from entering the space that we are trying to commercialize. As a reminder, patents don't allow or prevent you from going into a field. They only are an impediment to people trying to get into your field. So some people confuse the fact of needing a patent to commercialize something. You don't need that. You need it only to prevent others from entering your field. We have issued patents. We continue to prosecute patents in this space around all of the information we are gathering. And I feel very confident of our patent position going forward.
How does the company plan to finance ongoing clinical trials and future commercialization efforts without significantly diluting existing shareholders?
Yeah, well, we will finance the company because the most important thing is that we get this product to the market for the benefit of patients and the company for the benefit of our shareholders. We put an ATM in place about a year ago. We have deliberately not used it at this point in time because the price has not been at a level that management thinks is appropriate. We believe we're undervalued. We will finance the company in an appropriate fashion to maintain our cash resources to complete the process for this drug, getting it on the market, getting it available for patients, and building out the company from that perspective.
Given recent volatility and decline in the share price, what specific strategies or catalysts can investors expect in the near term that could rebuild confidence and shareholder value?
Well, we are very confident of the position we have. We will continue to report on the progress we will make. We will continue to expand and explain to you why this drug is superior to other drugs, why this drug fits well in combination. And we hope you come along as shareholders because we believe we will build a very valuable company in the future as this rolls out over the next 6 months, 1 year, 18 months.
How does Z-endoxifen differentiate itself from existing and upcoming therapies in metastatic breast cancer?
Again, I should make this a test for the people who are listening in here. Z-endoxifen is superior in blocking estrogen at the estrogen receptor. So that's step one. It also degrades the receptor. It's not as strong a degrader as some other drugs, but it does participate in degradation. All current therapies cause estrogen receptor mutations. There are 4 or 5 specific changes that occur. The palette of mutations that the body has, that the DNA has, in order to escape current therapies is limited. So we can test endoxifen against all of the current known mutations that occur in all patients. And endoxifen uniquely, with only other drug, elacestrant, is active in the estrogen receptor mutations. So it's better at blocking, causes degradation of the receptor, which most drugs don't, a few do. And it works with the estrogen receptor mutants, which only one other drug does, most don't. Okay, let's switch to its PKC beta activity, which is completely different. None of the other drugs have this. This is all the drugs that I've just spoken about are a foot on the brake, but the cancer can still touch the accelerator if it wants. So you're like the kids were in the, when I was growing up, you're at the traffic light with the foot on the brake and the foot on the accelerator. As soon as you take the brake off, it takes off. So all of the drugs that don't cause apoptosis or cellular death, all the drugs except endoxifen, are static. They keep the tumors from growing, but when you stop, you can take the drug for 5 years. If you stop taking it, you then allow the cell to potentially begin growing again. You need to kill a cell to stop it from growing definitively, like Dracula with a stake through the heart. And endoxifen, uniquely among these, at the higher doses that reach PKC beta activity, causes programmed cell death, which is a cell's way of wrapping up its activities, dying in a way that allows the nutrients, the materials in the cell to replenish the cells next to it. That's why that's why cells have programmed cell death, so that when a cell dies, it contributes to its neighbors in sort of a symbiotic fashion. So those are the unique properties of endoxifen that make it best in class.
Are there any plans or ongoing discussions to form strategic partnerships or collaborations that could accelerate the clinical development or commercialization of Z-endoxifen?
Yeah. So companies like Atossa are always open and looking for collaborations that would be appropriate, would complement what we're doing with our activities, are right with respect to shareholder value and the economics of a particular deal, and make sense long term. So we're always looking at that. And we believe that as endoxifen begins to gather additional clinical data, its unique position among the estrogen receptor molecules will make it very attractive for partnering. As you already know, we have an ongoing combination study with Lilly's abemaciclib, which is either the number one or one of the top three drugs in its particular class. And showing superior activity in combination in that space would be a very exciting opportunity for us.
With recent concerns regarding Nasdaq compliance, what proactive measures is Atossa taking to ensure continued listing?
Yeah. So we believe we will achieve continued listing through the share appreciation, which will occur as people understand more deeply the programs we have over the 6 months, 12 months, and 18 months. We will there'll be an announcement in August, I assume, in which we will get an extension in order to obtain compliance. And we believe that through the achievement of our objectives and the announcements that we have planned, that we will regain the Nasdaq $1 compliance issue.
And we have time for one final question, Dr. Quay. Beyond metastatic breast cancer, what is Atossa's broader strategic vision for Z-endoxifen?
Well, I think it's articulated here. And when you have a molecule that is best in class and does the things that we talked about, blocking the receptor, degrading the receptor, working with mutants, working in other pathways, um, it clearly is, it's sort of like, having Babe Ruth on your feeder team, so to speak. So we intend to broaden as quickly as possible Z-endoxifen out into all of the potential indications it has. So as we've talked about in the last time frame here, in terms of preventing breast cancer in the first place, we FDA now believes through its guidance around mammography reporting, high breast density is a changeable risk factor for increased breast cancer in the future, and we want to address breast cancer prevention in those reduce incidence in those patients going forward. It's very useful in changing the surgical planning for patients in that neoadjuvant space. So in the 4 to 6 months before you have surgery or radiation, if we can shrink the tumor, if we can make it disappear by MRI, we give the surgeon a lot more options with respect to what they can do at the time of surgery. And frankly, there probably is long-term benefit from stopping its spread earlier rather than later. And of course, again, once the definitive surgery radiation is done, adjuvant treatment is an important indication. We continue to look at other places where Z-endoxifen could have activity. And I think it is quite a unique molecule in the overall armamentarium. And so I think you should stay tuned, as we like to say, for additional indications that could be very important for Z-endoxifen's role in medical care, both in oncology and outside of the oncology field.
Thank you, Dr. Quay. For more information about Atossa Therapeutics, reach us at 1-800-REDCHIP or email us at atos@redchip.com. Visit RedChip's investor information page for Atossa. It's atosinfo.com. There you can view and download the investor presentation and fact sheet and sign up for news alerts on Atossa. RedChip is excited to announce the launch of RedChat, our advanced AI assistant designed to empower investors with instant, in depth insights on thousands of small cap and microcap stocks. Try it now on atosinfo.com or go to red.chat. Watch Small Stocks, Big Money, RedChip's program featuring exciting small cap companies every Saturday at 7 p.m. Eastern on Bloomberg USA. And finally, join RedChip's next webinar with FatPipe tomorrow at 4:15 p.m. US Eastern. Register for all RedChip webinars at redchip.com/events, where you can also view an archived version of today's webinar. Thank you again to our many participants today, and thank you, Dr. Quay.
Great to be here.